Do you think that people are not fed up with I'm trying to show you what's going on with my life right now and all that, because they had Gaza. After Gaza, they had all sorts of conflicts. All everybody's crying all the time. Do you think it's a good strategy?
It is an effect. I forgot its name in psychology, where it's just like too much, and then you start like backing off from things, or you stop reacting as strongly because it's like
Mhm,
again
mhm.
and again and again.
Like
I
an
think that with combination of just explaining the scale of the massacre that's going on and not like pumping it into people's face, all the time. I think it will be like not too much. Worst case scenario, people see it on the news and it still affects them. And also to combine that with not it's happening to those other people, but what's happening to us right now as a result. The result is that we are under threat as well from the Iranian threat. So it's not only them, it's us. This is what they're experiencing. This is what we are experiencing. But the same horrors that they're experiencing now and we experienced before, it puts us in the same boat. But we need to see that it's happening to them as it happened to us, and what is happening now to us.
I agree. We need some sort of a shocker horror platform so people would be shocked. I agree.
What I can think of is like we can just like in October 7th, we made multiple websites and just dumped all the horrible shit in there. We can do the same, like make a specific website, and then instead of like every time trying to find all the things or ask for people, like every
And what are the message that we should signal to the good guys, to our side? Because right now we're talking about things that the West should see, what the Iranian people should see and heard, give
well,
if they could.
the Iranian, then we can do it again, like every collect footage specifically for protests. It can be on the same website, by the way. Like
What's
you
the
can have
messaging? What's the messaging?
that the world is with you. You can't do too much, right? Because but if you look, and if they see just the protests for them and all those things all around the world, it helps. That we can. That's the only thing we can do. Oh, we can. Oh, if you want, even add a tab like that website can have also like a tab of like news channels that covered it or things like.
When it,
Start with gathering footage of protests for Iranians around the world.
when it comes to the West, to continue the shocker kind of approach, it worked really well for Qatar and for Hamas with the propaganda and with the things that actually happened in Gaza, spreading it through TikTok, which is the main platform for young people nowadays to consume news and media. So we can use like actual footage straight from Iran after gathering it and centralizing it in one place to basically create campaigns, if you want to call it, or just spread like a lot of videos, try to make them viral, maybe with some kind of taglines that will speak more to people in the West, like maybe a conquering force.
I'll tell you
A lot
what
of things have
though,
worked for Gaza.
it can't be the same because we tried to do the same on TikTok
Mhm.
with our war in Israel. The algorithm it is more than just bias. The algorithm is literally controlled by China. It been
Right.
Oh,
suppressing,
true. Right.
and I don't think that should be the main focus.
Mhm.
You already have plenty of people that are doing those videos on TikTok, on Instagram. The reach is already there. And if you put those things out there immediately and post them one by one, you will get banned or demonetized pretty quickly. This is why I'm thinking more about the website because that's been the most effective thing. I've been doing Asbara for like, what, 2 years now? And at some point, with all the things that we gathered, we just helped creating a website, and then the government also created a website. And then I, instead of like every time trying to pull things, I would just send them the link to the website, and that has everything in it. Because in the end, like the social thing, the social platform didn't work. There's too much ideological interest, and keep in mind that the Qatar thing it 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 didn't start there. Like it's been building up for years. So yes, it was on social media, but it was also in the core of of the schools and universities. Is that it goes beyond that. This is why it works so well. It was a combination that in every major environment of the people, there was something for Qatar.
I don't think that we should mimic the Palestinian industry. I
Yep.
think it's to shoot yourself in the foot.
I
People are
agree,
fed
actually.
up with them
Yep.
to the point that they want to throw up. The only way that it succeeded for them is because, number one, they have this freaking cursed demonic alliance of the red and green. And the other reason is they are funded, they are heavily funded. This opinion is heavily funded.
I have one suggestion, which is basically someone else will do it because they know better. There's a pretty new Israeli marketing company. It's an AI based company. And I'm not just saying AI, everything powers AI nowadays. They've had a lot of success with creating content using AI and use AI to both monitor and evaluate how successful it is, and then feed it back to the AI to change it to create a loop of ever increasing content in terms of virality and in terms of changing opinions. It's actually a system that I had in mind a year ago and I started promoting it. What there is right now is already in place, working, pretty successful, run by marketing guys. And their CEO sometimes works as well, explaining and educating about related issues. I think they're worth contacting. Power Ads. I'll put their link in the chat here.
I think you can definitely use AI to organize things. I think the big problem with making the videos with AI currently, as much as
I'm
it's
not talking about
efficient,
fake videos. I'm not talking about fake videos.
no, I'm not even saying fake videos because I think I know what you're talking about. I know there's someone that uses AI just for the video of her image. And the problem with that, as credible as it is, as human the voice is, even if it's combined with real documentary stuff, just the concept of any AI influence that might be traceable in the video will immediately be dismissed as propaganda. So,
Right,
so
right.
like AI is a very useful tool. I agree with you.
As a managing tool.
And with that in mind, I'm going to fuck to sleep. I need to wake up in like 5 hours.
All right.
You do.
Good night.
Good night, then.
Is this for
Thanks for
the
being here.
Channel 12 interview? Are you still taking suggestions for what to say there?
Sure, I mean, it's not for the Channel 12. Like I'm also a teacher. I still need to do like a yeah, but like yeah, tomorrow it's either gonna be at 3 p.m. I'm gonna have the interview, or I'm gonna have it at 5 p.m. It depends of how socially anxious I feel, because they want me to come to the actual place and be in a panel, and I don't know if I can do that.
Okay.
I believe in you. If you can handle teaching, you're teaching children. If you can handle teaching in front of children,
Teaching children, dude, that's fucking easy. I don't need to constantly think of social cues with children.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I wanted to suggest just to focus on some misconceptions that I see going around.
I'm gonna tell you what, they definitely want me to focus on a girl that I know that I received news yesterday that she was murdered in Iran. That's probably the main fucking point that made them like finally like come back to me, because I've been trying to contact news outlets for like the last 2 weeks. From what I've seen from Channel 12, they've been pretty good. Every show, every news starts with at least like 20 minutes about Iran and updates on Iran. Like,
In all the outlets. Left,
yeah,
right, doesn't matter.
there is a general sense of what's happening there.
The
Where
most
that ends.
poisonous thing that I've seen is claims that if we strike Iran, then everyone's going to rally around the flag and suddenly they're all going to hate us. And that's just the one thing that I most want to see fucking die.
Either way, it's gonna be recorded. That's what I made sure.
I'll make sure to watch.
I'll update you in the situation. I am trying not to think about it. I will fucking take Xanax before that. I am going to sleep. Good night. Bye.
Oh, you'll do great.
Good night. Albi,
Fuck off.
you raise your hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so about the suggestion for, I was thinking of, the West as this political foundation, which is the French Revolution. With regards to politics, the French Revolution is like the basis. So if we can find a way to find comparisons and elements in common between French Revolution, I know it sounds very general, but I'll just be thinking about it now.
No, it's a good idea, but I'm trying to really drill down on it. And I tell you what, my problem is with the French Revolution as a base to anything. When you have a revolution that is talking about eliminating the entire existent structure, complete chaos in order to give birth to a complete new thing, it's dangerous. It's not, and you can do it to any topic. The Palestinian did it. They are. If you ask them, they are mimicking the French Revolution in a way, but it's disconnected from reality. So I don't know if necessarily the French Revolution is a good thing, because the left weaponizes it according to its will.
Well,
And
Hamas blames the Jews for starting the French Revolution.
so it's double-sided again. So the French Revolution, all the lefties, all this leftist legacies can be weaponized and de-weaponized when necessary.
But we should try to take it away from them in a way. The French Revolution was really left. That's history.
But fact,
Not the current left, of course. It's the historical left, which is a totally different thing. But what I mean is, it was a change of aristocracy was ruling, and now Islam is ruling. It's a big change. I totally follow you on the idea that it's wrong to change completely. But the system, the French Revolution is like a system revolution in the sense it installs republic instead of monarchy, and this is a big thing. And to get rid of the Islamic theocracy, it's a big thing too. Like, I mean,
The Hamas is more akin to like the Nazis or the fascists rather than like the Jacobins or the French left.
right. So that's exactly why I thought that, given the fact that Mr. Ayatollah is actually Indian, maybe you can spin that off. I mean, the guy is a complete Islamic occupier from another land. An
I would say
Iranian.
like Hamas is more in the vein of like the Nazi kind of like fascist sphere, and I would say the Ayatollah would be more in that vein of like theocracy slash revolutionary.
Right.
kind of-
IRGC Gestapo kind of thing. More.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now obviously they come together, right? Like they say, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend in a way, because in the end they actually hate each other. They're not really buddies, but they fight. It's kind of like when the U.S. had to partner with Stalin and the U.K. to defeat Hitler, for example. And then Hitler thought that the Jews were behind the Soviet Union and the UK and the USA. That's why they united. But it's really more to fight the common enemy, rather. And then they had the Cold War after.
Mhm. Uncle, what do you got?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. For some reason my camera won't turn on. I was just thinking, one thing I notice often is all these typical talking point that I see very frequently is that, these uprisings is just a psyop, a Mossad CIA psyop, right? And all
Or
that.
it's an economic thing. It's
Or
purely
an
economic
economic.
thing.
But it cannot be. It's not the Shah. Like they're trying really hard to no. It's not a call for the Shah, and it's not against the regime. The regime is actually popular. And one thing I find with that is that they, like many of the same people, would often point out that the Shah was a puppet of the United States, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because, well, that may be the case, but you see, the Americans also, it's widely acknowledged that they aided the Islamic Republic in their coup against the Marxists. Right. So what are you then supporting? Like, are you going to support the Shah or are you going to support the Islamic Republic if both of them are the result of a U.S. Meddling? And this is generally acknowledged by the critics, but they don't seem to be cognizant of that, as they, because it's a contradiction of narrative alignment, if you know what I mean. So what if the United States supported the Shah? They also supported the Islamic Republic. So who are you now going to support? Do you think the Shah should be there or the Islamic Republic? Because then you put it on them. They actually have to make the choice. Who are they actually supporting now? Are they supporting the one that was got by a coup, aided by the United States, or the one who also considered as far as they are concerned? So
If,
yeah,
Yeah,
if,
I
Ar-
think
if
I
Armin
think
was here, he
lately
would rip
with
you a new one for saying that Americans put the shine by Cuba.
I think
Yeah.
with the capture of, like, when in like boxing when you hit a good 1-2, I think the capture of Maduro was a very good one because it showed not only the relationship that Venezuela had, it even highlighted that even more, that the interconnection of, Iran, Russia, China in Venezuela. So now you have to really pick a side, because if you support Maduro and you find out that, you have all of these other people involved, I think the Iranian, what's going on in Iran is another one of those things where it shows that the leftists have been awfully quiet about this, because you now really have to pick who you're supporting, because it's right in your face. You can't really hide it anymore. You end up supporting a theocratic, authoritarian state. That's why I think they've been awfully silent, this one side of, because now it's inevitable. You can't really not connect Venezuela, Cuba, Hezbollah, Iran. It's so clear now that you have to pick. I know which side I stand on, but it's really hard to be neutral at this point, in
Can I
my
ask
opinion.
quickly, like, when you say pick, because as far as I'm concerned, they have already picked their side, whether it's the Islamists or the communists. Are you talking about, are they going to pick that they are overtly supporting Islamists when they're actually more like communists? Like now that Maduro is like, because as far as I'm concerned, they consider themselves already to be more or less on the same team, anti-West team, basically.
Yeah, they don't see a difference because they don't understand what Islam and jihadism is.
Yeah, but usually leftists tend to be secular or atheistic. They're very wary of having like religious causes or these kinds of things. So
Unless it's
it's
Islam.
yeah, but even then they don't like to, when they speak about it, they don't like to themselves frame it in a religious manner. They actually often ignore that, because they consider religion to be often a fact of culture, something that you shouldn't criticize and you should respect and you should leave alone.
Have you noticed that they would often spin it, like they would give a peculiar exception to Islam, like Alci is pointing out, because, like you say, it's true. That's generally how they will spin it as a form of culture, and
Yeah,
that's
I
why it's
I
indigenous and
understand.
Right, right,
righteous,
right, right,
and that's
right.
how they are spinning the Iran thingy, right? That Islamic Republic
Yeah, it's
is
like
a
in
natural
Latin
thing, right?
America when they say that for us it's okay if we do cocaine because it's a tradition of ours, right? Doing coca leaves is a tradition. It's kind of like that, right? Like you guys are spiritual, indigenous. Like they spin it like that, but yeah.
I want to go to Mr. Voss, who raised his hand.
Good point, Oscar.
Yes, with the Ayatollah, he may have been put in place by the CIA, but he opposes the US, so he's not a puppet. And the CIA is also quite communist, so that's
The
probably
CIA
why.
are communists.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
The intelligence organization of the most capitalistic
Please explain.
state.
there's
On
capitalism in the United States, but the people in control of the CIA are not capitalists.
they're
Very
not
criminal.
capitalist. Okay.
Maybe Trump wants to keep the Saudi Arabia on side, and they are afraid that the Strait of Hormuz will be shut down if Iran is attacked. And maybe that's a reason why he doesn't want to do an attack. I'll not say anything about CIA then. I have to.
About Hormuz, I don't think that the IRGC is capable of doing so much. I don't think that their proxies are capable of doing so much. If they can, it would be on a lower scale, I believe. Everything that comes out of Yemen, especially from the Yemen area, is going to be a very, very hard problem for the evil axis. Somaliland just a few days ago stated a statement that says that they accept Israeli military presence and they have no problem that we will start a base in Somaliland, just across
Mashallah.
Yemen.
And I agree with that.
We need to hope for the best. um, all right, and what did I want to say? I wanted to say that maybe it would be actually a good idea. You started talking about yes, monarchy, no monarchy. How do you explain to these people? And so I think that actually, right now, who is a Marxist, a leftist, a non monarchist, is basically acting like Attila the Hun. He is acting like Genghis Khan. His entire people are poor. The real is dropping. He doesn't care about feeding them. All it's important is to march to the next city and conquer. I think that he's much more monarchy-like than the Shah.
The Iranian people have had a king, an emperor for thousands of years. They're used to this kind of social structure. Over the years,
Right.
they've
This
become
asshole thinks that he's Xerxes. He thinks that he's king of kings. And I'm talking about Khomeini.
in the more recent history, the king has been a leader while people have been getting more and more power.
John, can you mute your mic? Thank you, sir. You were saying?
I said that the people have been getting more and more power, more and more resources. So it's been moving from less of a king of kings. We have a prosperous empire with a king leading it. And the Shah was pretty open with the world and good to his people. Iran was pretty rich. It was actually richer than Israel. But it has a
Blooming.
yeah. It had a I forgot the term. Some I think the Hebrew one is talag. I forgot the one in English. See, maybe you know the word. I forgot it in English. Yeah, its economy was 6 times larger than Israel.
Lag, GDP.
GDP, thank you very much. Yeah, I think in the 70s or 60s or something like that. So it's pretty prosperous, but they do need someone to stand behind. That's all what they're also chanting in the streets. We need a king to make us accountable and to make Iran accountable and to make other people accountable. They're not socially used to having a full-on democracy where the people are the only ones responsible for their own selves. With Syria, they had the same problem where the people basically had a social structure that they weren't used to installed by the West when they drew the borders and when they put people in power. And that created problems in Syria to this day. So they probably need some kind of a republic or monarchy, but as they had before, where the people do have a say, they do have resources, they do have power, maybe something more like in the United Kingdom or in Denmark or something like that, more modern kind of monarchy, not authoritarian rule like we have with Khamenei and Khomeini.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Hello, John. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's my first time using this app, so I wasn't quite sure which bit to press to turn the mic off, but I discovered it. I wanted to say that I'm 77, and in 1979, the all the news and all the information that one could get in the UK, I'm from the UK, it all said that basically the Shah was killing everybody. I've learned since, obviously, and you get more sensible maybe when you get a bit older, and you get to not believe everything you read until you've determined that it's correct or incorrect. And what I found is that all the information that I got from obviously, if I say the BBC, it's the most disgusting news company probably in the world. Although I don't watch the BBC. I cancel. If you live in England, in the UK, you have to pay for a license to watch the BBC, etc. And
I live in Israel.
They're absolutely disgusting, and the majority of British people just despise the BBC. They are so corrupt and so biased that it really embarrasses me to be British in some cases. What was fascinating for me is all the information that I got about the Shah, in 79 and before, was all false. And, I sadly admit that because I didn't know any better, I believed it.
Yeah. I had a conversation with my father. He's not your age, but he's not far from you. And he actually argued with me. He was pretty sure that he's going to win that argument. And he said that he remembers that they were talking about the Shah being a cruel dictator. And I confronted him with new pieces of journalism that people made. And he was surprised.
Well, I wasn't that surprised that the information was wrong because the Islamic takeover was basically France, the UK, and I think Jimmy Carter in America, because they thought the Shah was going to be a puppet and he turned out to be independent. And France, UK, America didn't like that. So they thought, well, we'll put the Ayatollah in because they thought he was going to be a puppet. And of course, he turned out to be the most evil person that Iran's ever had to rule.
What else do we face except today? I'm asking everybody, except this bullshit talking point of the Shah was a dictator and monarchy is bad. What else should we prepared to? Because I'm thinking like maybe in Europe we have a problem because in America, let's face it, 85% of the Americans answered that they support an action in Iran. So the problem's not the Americans, but I think that in Europe they're a little bit more hesitant to back the Iranian people. So my question is this: how do you explain a guy, let's say in Denmark, that just because somebody said it before, why is it a Danish priority to help the Iranian people? How do I explain to somebody like this?
Can't we just help the Iranian people ourselves, and then they're going to have to recognize them because the Islamic Republic will be no more?
If I was younger, I have a unique perspective on this. I have a close friend of mine, born and raised in Iran. He's in Iran right now. We talked through, he's become a close friend. And just hearing him talk about daily life there and talking about, his feelings towards the regime, which aren't good. We need to help him. That's just all there is to it. And I'm hoping Trump follows through and does something to help him. Whether it's sending over weapons, for the protesters or, whatever.
I'll take it one step further and I'll say that I have no problem that Bibi would just start.
Yeah. Well, it's like I talked to him a day before the internet went out. He said, you know what? Much rather have the US and Israel help me than Europe right now.
Oh, they're not reliable on those things, I have to say.
Yep.
They don't have a good record.
No, they don't.
Leaving aside the British, maybe, but the Europeans don't have a good record.
Well, British society, and no offense, John, if I think John is British.
Yes, yes. You can say what you like about. Say what you like about it. Doesn't matter.
British society is being taken over by Islamists right now. I mean, that's what I see from my end of the world.
Yeah, it's. I mean, one of the very sad things currently is, of course, we've got a Labour government who basically they're not really Labour; they're communists, really.
Yeah.
And,
I heard that Keir defended what's going on in Iran the other day.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, he may, well, whatever he says, no one will take any notice. He's a. Am I allowed to swear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's an asshole.
A wanker, they say. I heard.
Yeah. Slumber is that, but yes. But the problem is that one of the things about the British, obviously, I'm not. I suppose it's a bit generalised, but we take a long time before we get angry, but when we do, then we're just as But the most British people are quite passive to a point, but once they reach a point of no return, then I did post a little message to Number 10, which is the government, Number 10, Downing Street, and I said that what's going on in Iran. You see what happens. You see what happened when you ignore people. Bear that in mind in the UK. But the problem with the UK, most people are reasonably comfortable and become very complacent.
And also a lot of fear of being called racist, bigot.
Well, I was born in the UK, but my family came from Poland during the pogroms of that time in the 1920s. And so I'm British, but I have certain sympathies for. I hope to be not closed-minded, and if I see injustices, it's very hard to know what to do as an individual.
To give you a little bit, especially when it comes to injustice and judicial corruption, I don't care if the person's on the left or the right. If they're being railroaded, they're being railroaded. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, I agree.
Even if I hate their guts and think they're a threat.
Yeah. Sorry. What were you going to say about the British? I would be interested to see your view.
I said that British society is slowly being taken over by the Islamists. I mean, that's what I see from my side.
I mean, some parts
they're becoming more docile.
some parts of the Midlands and London. I mean, a Muslim mayor in London.
Mhm.
I saw a policeman giving a speech to a crowd of Muslims, and he learnt to speak their language.
Okay.
And in England, in the UK, you've probably seen it on the news. If you go to a protest with a Union Jack, which is the British flag, of course, you can be detained for that. But if you look in the protest, there's hundreds of Hamas flags,
John,
and nothing happens.
can I
Yeah.
ask you if you've heard? I've heard that the UAE does not allow its young students to go to university in the UK because it fears that they will come back
Yeah.
extremist Islamist.
Yep.
Did you
That's
hear
what I
that?
heard the other day.
The leaders of the UAE are subsidizing. There's an economical issue about it that they
Funding.
entangle somehow. The funding, they won't fund their students who are going to study in the UK because they claim that the UK has become a Qatari influenced hotbed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I saw the other day.
Ryan? Ryan? Ryan?
Hey guys, how you doing? I've just been listening to you guys, just been enjoying the conversation. But I just have some news. There's a video on X going around Trump saying that the killing in Iran has stopped and
Yeah.
that
Last I heard, I think he's planning to put troops on the ground there.
It's what I was going to say. I think that it's what we call a Texas city shuffle.
Mhm.
You look to the left, something happened on the right.
I'm
Mhm.
scared that Qatar and Saudi have convinced them not to do anything, to be honest.
I see why you fear that, because there's a lot of money on the line, and there's Qatari has investments in Iran. They don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
Trump has investments at the Qataris. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's already so ballooned over proportions that something needs to happen. You can't just say right now, "Oh, he stopped killing people." He killed 12,000 or 20,000 by now. What do you mean he stopped?
Hmm.
It's like, what, you slipped in the shower? Oopsie poopsie. 20,000.
I don't know, it's giving me the
Yeah,
feeling of
I think they fucked up too bad.
Ryan, if I'll see if it's okay that I address what Ryan said.
yeah, for sure.
The king has a plan called the Iran Prosperity Program. And as a part of his plan, he declared it multiple times. He said it out loud that the rebuilding of Iran will involve neighbors and friends of Iran. He mentioned by name Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure about the UAE, but there's a lot for the UAE and for Saudi Arabia to gain out of Iran rebuilding itself and prospering. And I'll give an analogy. I don't remember if it was the UAE or Saudi Arabia, maybe both, who want to take part in rebuilding Gaza. There's a lot of real estate, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of things that they can gain financially. Specifically, Saudi Arabia wants to divest its economy and move it away from oil into multiple other sectors so it's not at risk from being so much affected by the price of oil, especially with people like Trump doing a lot of things, China. There's a lot of financial power outside of the hands of the Saudis in oil by other players. So there's a lot for them to gain if the RGC falls. I think that one of the things that Trump is doing behind the scenes is explaining to them those things, maybe even making promises. I think also the Shah is maybe talking to them behind the scenes. We don't know, of course, all these things. It's just speculations of mine and things that I can infer from their own interests and from the possibilities.
But don't forget.
Minister Gila Gamliel stated to
Yeah.
Jay again the second time or the third time already that she is in touch with King Reza Pahlavi, and she is not willing to elaborate on that.
Yes,
Okay.
but don't forget that right now, because Iran is such a bad actor in the area, people are holding on to whoever they can find, which is like whoever is friendly in those countries is like, okay, we'll give you everything. Once Iran will be friendly, they won't be needed as much. I'm not talking like in the first year or something, but like a couple of years later, they won't be needed as much. The investments will be much better in Iran because they have like Everything is better.
The sanctions would be removed.
The sanctions, they have a thirsty human
Drought.
wealth. Yeah, they have educated people. They have a lot of space, a lot of oil, a lot of material, everything. The Saudis' value will be less no matter what if they become friendlier. So in the long run, Saudi will fear that, but I'm not sure that they can stop it. So maybe they will need to let it go. But I can see them.
I would actually guess that Russia and China have interests that are far beyond the ones that Saudi has that can be an obstacle in this
Yeah.
maneuver. I think that they might be more of a problem.
Don't forget, whenever there's such a problem, it makes other people look better. So once you remove that problem, it's like, oh, whoa, I'm not needed anymore. Oh my God. Well, we need that problem so I can tell you, look at them, they're worst, you know?
You guys,
I don't think
I got to split.
Yeah.
You can stay.
I don't think that China will be as much of a problem as you think. And
They got no choice.
it's not only that, it's that, first of all, they don't bet on losers. China needs for a military takeover of Taiwan.
From what I understand, China is providing technical support to the regime as far as banning less.
It is, but basing your whole economy on Iranian oil, just letting it with your resources is not something that's strategically wise for them to do for their own goals of taking over Taiwan and becoming more dominant in the world. The US is acting very strongly against them attacking in Taiwan, and they know it. So they are trying to recoup their investments in Iran and try to improve their position maybe after the revolution and maybe risk manage it. So I personally don't think just because they're acting now, assisting, that they're gonna really make an effort as much as the United States and Israel are making to save the current regime.
Well, they don't.
I
They
think the
don't. They
Chinese are very
don't.
pragmatic. Like in the end
They're
of
very
the
pragmatic,
day,
yeah.
they're
Yeah.
very pragmatic. They will work with whatever they can. So
Mhm.
they're not when a player is pragmatic to that level, you can trust on it in a way because you know they will
Yeah.
not like suicide themselves like other more ideologies driven
China
players.
has
Yeah,
also has
and China's strategy is kind of like the Muslim Brotherhoods, where they keep it quiet, but they do it financially. They build a lot. They have the Belt and Road Initiative, in which they spend like billions of dollars on infrastructure all across the world, especially in poor and weak regions, to basically gain political influence and make money off of it. If Iran is not such an option for them, they will not put as much resources into that, especially when you have the US pushing so hard against their position. It's not worth it for them.
Mhm. Well,
And Russia is just so weak that they can't do much. And they
China
have the
has
whole
a
Ukraine
number of
debacle.
weaknesses. I said China has a number of weaknesses,
With
such
what?
as their population decline,
Mhm.
and I mean, also the tariffs are hurting them. You know,
Also, their military power, they can't project a lot of it as of now. Like they rely
they don't
on
have
US
the ships.
assistance.
They
Yeah.
don't have the ships.
Why is the
Yeah.
entire world has a population decline, or is it the entire world? Is there any part of the world which is not affected by it to any level? Not saying less, but at all. Is there any part of
For
the world?
for the
Communism,
US,
and Africa has the least, has the still the
So
most population, but
yeah,
they
but it's
also have
like poor
schooling
areas.
for girls implemented by the UN and such,
the
which
US,
are communist organizations, and they're doing that to reduce the population.
a
How?
lot of the
No, but I'm
US's,
talking like generally. What makes this? Is it like wealth only? What makes this
It's a
decline?
few it's a few things. In Iran, for example, there's the both economic situation and the religious situation, where people are less and less religious, so they're having less and less children. A lot of religions call for having as many children as you can. Judaism, for example, Islam, and the financial situation is just making it harder. In the West, the financially successful West, you have the same phenomenon.
No, but
and
wait one moment about
here
this point.
in the U.S., it's feminism, it's economic. Housing prices are out of control right now.
The economic one point I want to before you continue. You're saying economic, but the data shows actually the different. As when you become more rich, you have less children. When you're poor, you're generally having more children.
Yeah,
So it cannot be economic hardships.
That
Explain it.
for the middle
No, but
class,
that
it is.
no,
it's a
but
combination.
At least in the
it
U.S.
does have to do with multiple things. When you get capitalism, the wealth from that allows parents to spoil their children, and
Mhm.
those children then become communist, and that's what destroys the economy. The
Well,
EU, for example, is now more
here,
communist than China or Russia, and they are doing everything in their power to make people suffer more. But because we still have a lot of capital investment, we still are very productive, and so we still have comfortable lives. But at the same time, we have the government working against us.
for me, I'm 50 and I never had children. And I was very, very clear because I saw the divorce rate. I mean, I took in the statistics more than anything into account. With the over 50% divorce rate and women being able to take the kids from you completely. And it varies by state. Some states are worse with this. It's actually starting to get better, but that was a big, big indicator. I just weighed the risks against the reward, and
So
I
you're
was like,
saying it's the loss of the traditional family lives? That's what you connected to?
yeah, a
And
lot of it.
also, that's how many
Oh,
minorities in the States grew up without a father. Like they would demonize the father when he got locked up.
yep.
And when they give custody of the wives of the children, sometimes the wife was no better in raising
Well,
the sons.
let's since you brought that up, in 1994, Bill Clinton passed a bill, and they signed a bill. I think it was called the Tough on Crime Act or something. I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Such
what
an
it
American
did
name.
is it made like 3 strikes and you're out. And so it took a lot of black, and Hispanic fathers out of the home and just collapsed the family
Just
unit
look at what
overnight.
you said. What you said could be, if I was like stupid, it could look like a racist thing to say. You just
It's
look
not
at it.
though.
I know, but it's like just look how amazing this sentence is. You know, it's like
Yeah,
a reality check. When you are tough on crime, you end up with m- a lot of black and Hispanic. You said people in the U.S. in jail. That's
yeah.
crazy. That shows
I
a
mean,
deeper problem. That's like
it's the statistics. I mean, it's
no,
the
no, no. I know. I'm not saying you're not right. But I'm saying
yeah,
it's crazy to observe it. To
yeah,
absorb, not absorb.
yeah,
To watch this. It's a crazy fact that needs more deeper look.
yeah.
By the way.
I also think part of the problem is that the way that we set up our society in the United States after the World War II was very much built around a very specific family structure
Mhm.
that doesn't really make allowances for other cultures or other ways of kind of living. I mean, for example, in Jewish society, it's much more common for women to go to work and the men study. Like that's a kind of a reversal. Whereas in our American society after World War II, we set up these suburbs and men were supposed to go to work and work all these
Yeah.
jobs. And like African American society and Hispanic society didn't necessarily adapt to this very Anglo
They
modern.
started to in the
Yeah,
50s.
they were starting to, and I'm not saying that they couldn't have.
Yeah.
The laws definitely negatively impacted them, so I'm not saying that that process wasn't, but I also
Yeah.
just think there was inherently a flaw in this system that we set up because there wasn't a flexibility. If you look at early American societies, we had a lot of we either had farmlands, which were run by families, or
Mhm.
we had these city centers, which were
Yeah.
centralized in their own ways. So I when we tried to go to the suburban system, I just think that there was kind of not a lot of understanding of long-term projection. I also think that it was based on this idea of women having a very specific role.
The example you gave is actually very, very specific and small. The community that does this, like the woman
Yeah.
works more and the men studies, is actually a sub part of the sum of the Haredi community. It's very small. It
Yeah.
might be
I
just a
think
huge thing.
I think at the end of the day, there's a group in this country. There's groups in this country that have a vested interest in not seeing the problems of society solved because they profit from those problems.
But
And
is it new? Relatively, like it's like
no,
wasn't
it's
it like
always
that
been that
in
way.
the 1800 or whatever?
It's always been that way. I mean, take the Southern Poverty Law Center, for example. They profit off of racism. It's the truth,
Oh yeah, but the
And if
racism was
the
always
problem of racism
weaponized,
goes away completely, they lose their funding.
right?
And so they gotta propagate it again and again in the news to keep their funding.
I'd like to add
It
to
the
oh, sorry.
point is, like, we can't solve these problems if we're not allowed to talk about them honestly.
I
You
agree.
know? I mean, one of my biggest fears for Iran is that as the transition happens, the wrong type of, like, nonprofit interest groups come in and do damage to Iran's society as well.
Well, just like any society, I'm sure. I think the population. First of all, I'm sure they will have a baby boom after it's all said and done, and life become a little more normal. I'm sure of it. Many will just want to have. It's natural, especially when so many young people just
Peace and
died.
prosperity.
It's like people want to have life. When
Mhm.
one of the things is after wars, after big losses, people want to create hope, and they have hope, and they will bring children. So there will be at least
Yeah.
temporarily they will have a baby boom, which is lovely. I love it. I love to see it. It's life, right? You wanted to say something?
Just to add to your previous question, I absolutely agree about the baby boom. I'm looking forward to that as well. The whole culture, the world of the global world, in
Let's
multiple
add to the
areas.
people.
In the United States, as an example, I'm not talking about more specific things like control of people who can make profit out of it. I'm talking about the population as a whole. There's a lot of studies that show that religiosity, how much people believe in religion, is declining throughout the world, especially in the West. There is a rise in some areas, for example, like in
Yeah.
Islam, but that's a temporary thing due to the Muslim Brotherhood and like occupying from within, converting people. But in general, more and more people are leaving religion. And in the past, just due to how society was structured, where you needed more kids in order to work, to fund, to survive, when you needed larger armies, you needed more people in general for society. Nowadays, as societies become more prosperous, you could have more kids. People invest more money in their kids. They
Yeah.
have less kids, regardless of the hope and what, like, thinking about the future. They put more of their resources into kids. So each person gets more money, but you have less people in general.
Well, go on.
Yeah, I was just about to say that after the baby boom in Iran, I expect the same to be for there to
Yeah.
be a slowdown, but for the society at whole to be richer. You can see that in China, for example. The society is declining, but the country is becoming richer and richer.
So you know what I'm thinking now? I'm thinking now that maybe this slowdown in birth is a natural thing that the world goes through as it's changing, but the conflict doesn't come from the point that we're all having less babies, but it comes from the conflict between those parts that are having actually the same rate or even more. The fact that it's conflicting with this because they are winning over the parts that are not. So if we would all be having this slowdown in rate, it would be not a problem, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And you can see that in Europe, in Israel on a small scale, but like it's a really big problem in Europe. The jihadists call what they do outside of taking over, the way they take over things is they call it jihad of the womb. They have
Right.
a lot of children, and in the generation after, and they've been operating for a few decades now, they have many more people on their side because they're just giving birth to those people, educating them from zero from birth on their ideology.
They have 4
And then
wives.
Yeah,
they
that's the other thing
win
too. They're
the Congress.
using multiple women, and they're also putting
Yeah.
those women on these social structures. So we're actually paying for our own destruction. We're
Yeah,
paying
yeah,
the jizya, even if we're not.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
the actual term jihad of the woman, if I'm not mistaken, it comes directly from Hassan al-Banna, which is like the Muslim Brotherhood for a person who made the entire organization. And I heard, I'm not sure actually, I can check it, that actually in Egypt they have a surplus of baby births. I'm not sure, but I think they have too much population in
Uh,
Egypt because they cannot hold it. But
Yeah,
I'll have
because
to check it.
this has actually been shown statistically. I've seen it in 2 locations. They don't Muslim population cannot sustain itself over time. So,
yeah.
like, all populations go through declines, but they go through, like, it's, like, steep. They don't have, like, a slow it's
And
like
you
a
know what?
problem.
You know
We have
what?
the same problem in
It can
Israel.
explain actually why they have less of a value for human life because they have too much of it. It makes sense in a way, right?
Yeah, and they say like Hamas terrorists, for example, we say we'll just have more children, we'll have more kids. It's not only the fighting for Allah, Allah will take care of them in the afterlife, etc. Is that they have more kids to send to die, basically.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
oh
as
yeah.
as for Egypt, Egypt is very poor. Their GDP is very poor. They're putting a lot of money into, like, for example, building a capital, building an army, but they have a lot of internal issues. So it's the same kind of a thing where they have a lot of people in order to sustain the society. Like if you like ignore that it comes from religious and cultural reasons, just in terms of like what the results of those things are, that they have a lot of people but they're poor. More successful countries, for example, that are pretty Muslim and are becoming even more Muslim, Turkey, people don't have their kids as much.
Yeah, the Turkey society in comparison to Egypt is like it's a much healthier society in a way because Egypt, if it comes a day that America stops giving Egypt money, it will take days until the country collapses. They're completely living out of a yearly loan or something like that. They have a lot of money from the US, and this is what sustains their country functioning. That's
America
it.
should not be paying any country to survive.
America has like this system. They are paying countries all over the world, but what do they get in return? In return, they can actually say to these countries, you do this, you don't do that. To the level that if someone is threatening the life of this country, they can tell this country, do nothing. Let them kill you. Okay,
But
that's
for
the
how long would
extreme
they
of it.
do that though? That's the question. For how long?
That's
Because then
it.
they'll
So
just become greedy and they'll want to get more and more and more.
okay, but until now, just imagine America actually controls the actions of other countries if they want to. It's a so, and people agree to it because they get benefit from America. America is also giving very good stuff, not just like and uh, just imagine you saying give money to other countries. You are taking also a lot, which is like I'm not sure. I think it's money well
I know
spent in from the side of America.
maybe, but,
I'm not
like, I
talking
feel
morally and everything. I'm not
I yes,
getting.
but the problem is that okay, I see what your point is to some
I'm just
extent, because
explaining it. I'm not saying for it or against it.
yeah, but I don't wanna control Israel at all because I think that we should listen to Israel more than we do, because I think we have some sort of stick up our ass where we just don't wanna listen sometimes. But also, it's I don't like that there's a lack of morality about it, and it's also pretending like we're being nice and we're not being nice. I don't
Right, but you know what? First of all, morality and in the when it comes to countries dealing with each other, morality has never been something that was really taken into account. People do what they can to survive and to better their countries, and morality was never, and you can say even will never be the largest part of it because it's not reasonable to be moral and let go of other things that will make you prosper more. Each needs to take care of their own. So that's the basic line. It can also be looked at as a delicate game of chess. Like, you are quieting this one and telling this one to, you can play it in a way. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but it can be actually a very stabilizing factor in the whole thing. It's not
I mean, I think
fair. It's not like something good, but it's like,
okay.
what would you have if you don't have it? You can be having a worst world without it.
Well, I don't. Here's the thing. I understand that, but the problem is, then we have to protect people who hate us and want us dead, and also who kill like our allies. Like we have to go in and like force the Israelis to hold their hands when Gaza should have been leveled, in my opinion. And I don't like that.
Yeah, but it's like you're a teacher of a class of 20 students, and you have to keep everybody safe and relatively happy. You make
Okay,
whatever you can do to make everybody happy. Yeah, sometimes some of those have to be suffering a little more. As long as the entire class doesn't kill each other, that's a win, right?
the
Maybe that's the reason we didn't have extreme wars like we've had 200 years ago.
the passing of the torch from the British to the Americans has had a stabilizing impact. I don't not see that. And, I
And
do
it's
think
not
that
perfect.
it's also just like Americans feel, on
They
average,
don't
feel
get
very,
it.
they don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not saying that I don't get it. I don't understand the geopolitics of it all. But also, like, I feel like most Americans are just like frustrated because all they see is their tax dollars going overseas.
You know why they don't get it? And because it's not explained. And why isn't it explained? Because it's not moral. And the language today is only pretending to be moral. And
Well, it's
the
also
world is not operating on the basis of morality. It's just not. It's
well, and
not.
it's
In reality,
also
it's not.
Americans were, I mean, we have to remember that the main founding cultures of the United States, there was more than one culture here, but the main founding cultures of the United States were very utopian moralists. I mean,
Yes.
and so that those cultures and the way they's mixed, it's very, very hard for us to, I mean,
To talk it, to explain it. So it's an unspoken thing. So no one actually, if no one actually learns it deeply, they cannot understand it because
even
it's
like,
not something that you say.
do you
Just
know,
imagine the president comes and says, I pay those people to let the population somewhat die because in the greater calculation, it will be beneficial to the entire area. Just imagine an American president saying, it
yeah,
will
I
not
mean, we
work
can't,
well.
Americans, I heard this from people that Americans, when they had to torture people, like CIA, they had to be taught how to torture people from the Russians because we didn't know how to do it. Like, it's not in our consciousness to kind of think in those terms. I'm not saying that we don't have sociopaths, every country does.
Yeah, but
But
it's not, but you have like this, what's the word? The way you speak, the way you think and speak is in moral terms. And reality does not act like that. It does not work like that. So it's a cognitive dissonance in a way, and you have to learn how to work with it. And it's confusing for a reason because it's dissonance, it's confusing. So I get why it's so confusing to so many Americans and also other people around the world. But I think the world after World War II became more speaking in moral terms, and it's just not true. It doesn't work like that, and it's a lie.
I
And
don't think the
people,
world did. I think the West did.
yes, yes, yes.
When you have peace and prosperity, it's much easier to start talking about feelings and morals and more subjective things than being affected more directly by conflicts and things that can affect you on an individual level, but are still global or regional because you don't have those things. You don't have like a war of the whole region or your country and another country. You start
It's
talking about more individualistic things. Yeah, you're kept from those things because you don't have them. When a society starts developing with that kind of mentality, you're kept away from those kind of things. For
right.
example, the Iranians nowadays, they're talking about an occupying power, like an actual occupying power, because they're experiencing it on a daily level. But when you talk to Europeans from the woke side of things, they don't experience occupation, so they don't know what it's like. So they can freely describe it in a lot of ways, connect it to things, but not to actual experiences on the ground. And they can start talking about what's right and what's wrong because they're not being shot at. So it's different. That's not the reality you're experiencing.
There's also
The reaction to the world actually seeing at the end of the World War II, seeing the death camps. I think the world had a big crisis of identity at this point, and they decided, no, we will be better than this. But they're not, because humans are humans, like we cannot pretend now that we're better. And it was an extreme consequence, yes, but the world just said, no, this is not us. It will never be. So they went too far in the other direction in a way.
Yeah, there's a book called I didn't read the book, right? I just saw a couple interviews with the guy, and I'm blanking on his name, but I think it's like called like The Return of the Strong Gods or something like that. And it talks about how after World War II, it was basically it's like these weak gods of like what we worship is like equality and fairness and diversity, and those like these are like weak gods. And now after the Soviet Union fell, you slowly started to see the rise of like the strong gods, like family, like religion. Those things are like strong gods.
When you say gods, I guess you can replace it with values, right?
Yeah, that's what he means by it. He's using it as a metaphor.
Okay, the way I see it, it's not that equality and fairness and all of that is not worth it, but I think there is like a ladder, levels of different things. And on the top, you have things that are connected to survival. And beneath them, you have like equality and all of that, which you can take care of and you can be worshiping, quote unquote, after you have the higher ones. So you need both, but you need to remember which is more important and when.
Yeah, so his point was that basically the weak gods have been the ones who've kind of run most of the second half of the 20th century, but the stronger ones, the more baseline ones, are going to kind of come back
Because
because
we forgot about the higher ones because we weren't in survival mode.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
So and also we pretended that it's not important because we
Well,
didn't
it
want it.
also pretended like we were beyond tribalism, and
Exactly. Yes.
that's not true. I don't even think it's possible. In fact, I think in some ways tribalism has its merits. I'm not saying that we shouldn't that we should have like tribal based laws or anything like that, but
We need to acknowledge human nature. That's it. We actually tried to ignore how humanity functions. And that's very bad when you actually face reality at some point.
yeah, we also had this is just an enlightenment hangover. I think that there's this idea of in the liberal West, as much as I love liberalism and as I love the West, I do think that there's a flawed premise of this kind of idea of like the sovereign individual. And the problem is humans are kin based savanna apes, basically. I mean, it's never been like a sovereign individual just trekking out. There's been some individuals that have been that way, but they are the exception, not the rule. It's mostly been families and then extended family networks and then trade through extended family networks, et cetera, et cetera.
So two things, I guess both are evolutionary. Humans have a shared ancestor with
Chimps.
chimpanzees. And there's an area, I think in the Congo, I think, where there's a river. There's been studies on that where two populations of apes were separated. One developed into chimps, one developed into bonobos, if I remember correctly. One area had a lot of resources, one had not many. The chimps developed in an area where there wasn't a lot of resources, so they developed the mechanism of aggression. Other animals have that, but their society and a lot of their evolution developed around aggression, which is basically fighting and having the strongest is the leader because the resources are scarce. On the other hand, the bonobos evolved in an area with a lot of resources, and the way they settle conflicts is with sex and with some kind of submission, like scratching each other's back, like bonding, because for them, they're not at a risk of dying out as a species. They can basically afford themselves to settle conflicts like that. And specifically, when it comes to Islamic and Arabic culture, they developed in the same kind of region in the Arabian Peninsula. There used to be an Islamic writer in the 1900s, I forgot exactly when, who wrote about this very problem where if we keep tribalism we cannot survive. We have to stop relying on aggression, and that our society will eventually collapse. And you can see that in a lot of Islamic countries nowadays where they're poor. Their societies are basically very weak against more resource rich societies like the United States being able to control a lot of countries thanks to their resources. Not only religion, but also culture comes from a place of we don't have a lot of resources, we will fight. We will group up brother and brother, cousin and cousin against outsiders. And that's why I think Iran, which is going to be very united, is going to be very strong under the Shah, but also because culturally and socially they will have much more resources. Take the United States, for example. They don't have a lot of one ethnicity to connect them all, like a shared ethnicity. Like this is the country of the Germans. Everybody here is German
No, I
ethnically.
mean, the Groyper types are trying to create a false white ethnic group, but
Yeah, of course. But the United States, as the world's dominant power, got together through resources. Everybody here can have some power, and we will work together to gain more power, more resources. They focused on building resources and cooperating, building all those rail networks and so on, versus fighting with one another, as you can see in Islamic and Arab cultures. And so that's why I think Iran will be very prosperous, and it wants to do the same with nations in the region like Israel, UAE, Saudi Arabia. But it is like tribalism is a part of human nature. But when you have more resources, you become less tribal. You become
I
more individualistic.
I slightly disagree with that, but I'll explain.
Yeah, please.
I also think though that America has a kind of a beautiful system where we have basically found a way to cheat systems that usually go against each other. One is that we have in-group sharing because we have this democratic republic, and so we have this shared American identity when things are going well, at least, right? But historically, if you look at different cities and states, we have kind of a faux internal competition in the forms of group sports and different economic powerhouses that have shifted over time. The powerhouse of the South, and then it was the industrial powerhouse, and then new agrarian powerhouses, like different systems. Right now, there's a technological powerhouse in the form of the tech bros. And so we have this system where we can compete with each other in kind of a faux way where it all kind of still helps the other, if that makes sense.
I think you'll always have that in societies. There's never 100% true cooperation and sharing. Like, we're just not that kind of a species. Even if you look at Nordic countries that have a lot of sharing, like, you can live off of the state
Yeah.
for your whole life if you're, for example, disabled or whatever it might be. And it's people paying taxes, it's people sharing their resources. Yet, they also trade, they also compete. It's like a much stronger example of sharing, but they're also semi-capitalistic. So I
Right.
think it's inevitable. You do need some kind of balance of sharing and competing.
Right, but what I mean is the United States as a whole benefits from the faux competitions that exists within it. So instead of we have all this internal competition which creates a stronger economy. That's part of why the EU was originally created, because the EU looked at the Americans and were like, okay, you guys are not really a country, you're a mess of countries. And so they tried to replicate our system and enrich themselves. It's one of the goals was to like
It's
mimic and create that same wealth. It just didn't work because there isn't a united identity in Europe. The nations are too old.
the Europe has become rich thanks to the European Union. They have a lot of internal cooperation, but they do still have like some problems, of, like you said, like a lack of like a single identity, but also some other technical things like multiple languages. They're not as entirely integrated as the United States. They benefited from the same kind of competitions and like inside competitions. In Israel, we have that like on a smaller scale, but like really going strong. A lot of, for example, high tech like cyber companies, for example, specifically competing against one another and like creating like really good products due to that competition. So
Do
like
you think Israeli society is an individualistic society?
it's a spectrum because we have a lot of subgroups here. You have people who are completely individualistic, for example. You have everything of everything. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have very tribal cultures really against individualism in the form of Hasidic Jews, for example.
Yeah, and you also
Somewhat
have
Arab.
Bedouins, right?
Yeah, and some Arab as well, depending like where in the country. But like, yeah, Bedouin would be maybe strongest example where like also like live like tribes like in the desert, in like intense in terms of like family, like social structures. You could have multiple wives, those kind of things. Like that's very tribal. But I'm talking about in terms of collectivism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an example for the old type of tribalism, which is like actual tribalism. But I think what Gal was speaking about, if I'm understanding correctly, it's the perception of one in connection to the whole. Like, am I right? Like individualism is seeing yourself as the considering yourself and your needs, and not so much on the whole, and the opposite also. So
It's
actually,
also
yeah,
identity. Individualism, sorry, is just identity as well. Am I Shauna first, or am I Mormon first, or am I white first?
and as a result of that, you vote differently, you do things differently, you cooperate differently, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay,
It's
yeah.
both.
so
It's both.
so in
It's
Israel,
both of the things you said.
I think in Israel there are all the spectrums. I think most of Israel though is in the kind of the healthy middle, I think, in a way. The Hasidic community is more like less individual. It's theological, actually. They vote whatever the entire group votes, and they are discouraged from being like individual. But they are also affected. So many of them are actually individuals more. But the tribalist view in Israel is more like survivalist view. You know, it's like you stick to the group because you know instinctively that this will be good for the entire group. It's not like you're forced to it. If you don't want to be part of it, you can do it, you know? So it's tribal, but not tribal in the basic, like old way.
There's actually a phenomenon where when you get into a more survival mode, you stick to what's familiar. That also includes your so-called tribe. That can be your family, your friends, but also the people who share the same views as you.
You find your tribe,
Politicians,
whatever even
yeah,
if it's
yeah,
not solid.
and politicians, I think like Bibi, have taken advantage of that. Basically, polarize, and by polarizing, it means like you separate into those groups, into those tribes. But you can only you can like society at large can only stay like that for so long because you have technology entering the hands of individuals, spreading ideas, opening connection channels, and you have economy giving more and more resources to more and more individuals, which is why you can see Hasidic people, for example, slowly being more and more integrated here in Israel, and as you can see that in the United States as well, they're more participating in society.
I grew up Hasidic, but I can also tell you that within the Hasidic young people, you have both. You have people who are individualistic, you have people who are not, and I think it's actually becoming more and more individualistic. It can go any way. It's like their minds are open in very surprising ways, you know?
Yeah, I actually think that individualism is in some ways an outgrowth of not entirely, there's other factors, but I think it's somewhat an outgrowth of homogeneity. I think that it's easier to be seen as an individual when you're very similar. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to look similar or whatever, but like if you're like I look at New York society, for example, they have a shared identity as you New Yorkers. It's like a thing there. And they're one of the most individualistic areas of the United States. And the United States is very individualistic.
You can have both. There's always both. You have some kind of a feeling of belongingness to your own family, to your friends, to your city sometimes. You can have pride for being whatever, and you can still be individualistic. The more important thing, I think, is how does it shape society at large? Can you still keep having those groups that you identify with? And can you have different tiers? Or can you be, I'm an only this or that, a Muslim or a Westerner, a believer or
Well,
a
okay,
disbeliever.
let me put
Problem
in.
is when your individual ideas or needs or whatever are instead of the general,
Yeah.
when it interferes, as long as they're both in line somewhat, you're fine. Once
Yeah.
you are going against the tribe, then you're individualist no matter what. That's the issue. The extreme part of it is the issue. You
True.
can be an
Well,
individual as long as whenever comes a strong disagreement between the two, you know that you're part of the tribe. So it's a delicate balance.
no, it's true. But I was just thinking too, like, okay, so homogeneity. Utah, I'm not from Utah, but there's like lots of Mormons there. When people who come from other, who are LDS or Mormons, go from other places and into Utah, they describe the feeling of being in a fishbowl because when everybody has the same, not everybody, but like at certain times in history, it was like 70% was Mormon. Like you all of those, like, nuances and, like, these little tiny differences become so much more pronounced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in
So
Utah, it's actually also theological, just like in the Haredi groups. It's more like when it's mixed
well,
with
it's
actual theological thing, when you're not
yeah,
fitting into the group in
it's
a way.
cultural theological, but yes.
Yes, yeah. I mean the same. It's like the ideas. It doesn't matter what's the origin exactly to me, but there is the thing of tribes in a way, not actual tribes, but what group, which they are self-preserving, and they have this action of banning people, not banning, like banishing. How do you say? Like remove people out of the camp, like in the old ways. So this is meant to keep the tribe one. It's like consequences, like when you are
Yeah.
too individualistic.
It
So
it
these cultures have this,
and it does depend a little bit. So from
of
I
course.
see what you're saying. Well, what I was gonna say is it depends a little bit too on, like, one of the benefits is that Mormons change out one of the benefits of our tradition is that we change out our local leadership about every 5 years or so, like, we rotate them out,
That's
and
good.
so I had a friend grow in, church growing up, and she was just kind of a character. She was high anxiety and very expressive and not normative, right? And the local leadership we finally got local leadership who just said, "You know what? That's actually really good for us to have," and, like, to kind of break down some of these older cultural motifs that are not actually religious in any way, that don't have they're just old cultural hangups.
Mm.
So,
What would they say if there was the old leader? How would they react?
it's just a change it would depend on the leader because again, they change every 5 years.
The worst case scenario, what would they say?
The worst case scenario would be I've heard stories, I've never seen anything this
Like
dramatic, but
send
I've
it
heard
somewhere or whatever?
like, send them home from church, be like, "You can't come back until you change." Like, you have to
Mm,
be in a dress for church, otherwise you're gonna get, at minimum, weird looks. My congregation, for most of my life, not every congregation, but most of my life, I was in a congregation that was mostly converts, and so there was a lot more flexibility where I grew up, but I've heard stories of these things.
But look, I can see how can I say it? A tribe has to self guard itself, the
No,
the
no, no, you're
borders of it.
right,
No,
and
I
there's
just say, oh, wait, but it's like, yeah, it's in specific cases it will be unfair, it will be not good, but the entire other tribe sees it and learns from it, and it's not nice, but people need to be like disciplined, not disciplined, but need to be in line with what's acceptable to their society in order for the society to be somewhat one.
no,
Why do
I
we need it to be one? Because it's
Well,
survival, it's like
I
better.
I
Nice,
actually
yeah.
I think I don't know. I think there is also obviously like a benefit to certain like uniformity and
Mm.
like predictability and like, everybody having like similar motivations. But
Yeah,
for
it builds
example,
trust.
I
It
work
builds
with
trust, right?
yes. However, will always be people that are very eccentric and that don't fit the norm. And some of those people might be the ones that we would benefit from. They happen to be very intelligent or geniuses. For
Mm.
example, I work with people that are mentally ill. and some of them say the most outlandish things. But I come to understand that, like, for
There,
example, delusions and schizophrenia, these kinds of things, in a lot of the cases, these people are just like eccentric, like individuals that maybe a little bit like have a very low IQ. For example, I know this one lady that she believes she's a Christian mystic, and that she is like has been put in a situation where she's being like held against her will in a mental health hospital, and she just prays for people, and she got in trouble because she pushed her family out of their home because she thought that the world was going to end, and that there were black spirits in the house. And so, to me, I've had family that are very also religious, and to me this person is just an eccentric that is ugly, unfortunately, not very pleasant to look at, a slightly lower IQ than regular, and can easily be categorized as somebody eccentric and put in a mental health hospital.
exactly. It's like
Um,
all of us have it on a lower regulated level, and the
yeah,
extremes are just more visible. That's it. It's not different.
yeah, and we ourselves are also kind of quirky too. We probably like have our own like little things that we do, or our little habits or little
But
things.
but you know what? You know what? The point about being one in society is not to actually be one, is to learn how to hide your weirdest stuff and change if something doesn't fit exactly, but you can find your way within it. That's why you can be
I'll
also
tell you something. Some of
individualistic.
my clients that are very open with me, they tell me this. They tell me, you know what? Like, with you, I tell you all the shit that I don't tell the psychiatrist, because I know that you, when I talk to you, that you take me seriously, and that my weird beliefs about me talking to the machines or talking, whatever you want, weird ass belief you want.
Exactly. It's
Um,
a game. It's funny. Yeah.
yeah, and then they go to the psychiatrist, like they ask him, like, "Hey, do you believe, what's going on? Like, what do you?" And they don't tell him because the
They
psychiatrist
see
is
the
gonna think
look.
that,
Because they see the
yeah,
look on the first thing they say, then they will censor themselves. You see, that's what I mean. It doesn't have to be like actually cancel yourself to be part of the tribe. No, but learn what to say and when to say it. It's not that complicated for most people, but for some it is.
My mom is autistic, and so figuring out what people are like like expressing is actually quite difficult. My sister and I frequently have to explain to her why
like,
basic
do
things
you
are
like it?
inappropriate. I mean, some expressions she understands, but like because she's actually quite bright. She's actually
That's
higher than
it.
average, but
You know what? Look, about this. I am not autistic, okay? As much as far as I know, I have never been suspect of this, but I have those stuff that things that are obvious to other people, I need to be explained from basis, and people are like very frustrated sometimes because they're like, "What do you mean? That's how it is." But I get the actual genius of it. It can be when someone actually examines everything from the basis up and doesn't take nothing for granted. I can see it, I can understand it, but it becomes very hard to live like that, by the way.
Have you ever heard of Temple Grandin?
Nope.
yeah, I love her.
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
it's a woman. Can you spell it?
Temple
Temple is exactly like Temple. It's
Yeah, and the last name?
Temple. Grandin, I don't know how to spell her last name. It starts with a G though.
Grandin.
Okay, what's about her? Who is she?
So she is actually
Very
an
special.
autistic woman, very intelligent. She actually designed like a new way to humanely slaughter cows. And she actually like tells you her story, how she thinks in like pictures. For example, like in her book, I read it like a long time ago, but she basically saying that there are people that understand things differently, and then in her case she thinks that people with autism understand things more like in pictures and
In
reference to
in her
things in
specific
this.
case,
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, she says that like, well, that she was severely impacted when she was younger, but that she was able to kind of manage to gain skills and abilities and leverage her strengths to become like a designer of a way to humanely slaughter cows.
That's
And
great.
she says that being autistic helps her because she doesn't relate in the same way to the emotional aspect of a task that other people may relate to. So it's very interesting, and she's pretty smart, pretty genius. I often use her as an example to talk to some clients about disability and how some people can overcome or use that to leverage and continue to strive.
And
Um,
you can understand this different ways of viewing the world if you ever get a chance. And I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just saying, if you ever had any experience with some sort of psychedelics in a safe way, you see
I knew you
how
were
the
gonna say that,
mind.
cat lady.
I did
how
too. I knew
how
exactly.
Yeah,
how
I was like, here it comes.
how did you know? No, but like you suddenly get how your mind connects with other, you know, it's like the different connections, and you feel it different, and you know it, and you remember it later.
I've
Like
heard stories.
Yeah,
I won't touch those with a 10-foot pole because about half my relatives have bipolar disorder, and if you have schizophrenia or bipolar
oh
in your
yeah.
family, they're like,
Okay.
"Don't touch that shit, please." Yeah.
So you cannot control the connections, right? Those
Right.
connections that I said, it can go very bad. You don't know, but
Well, you can activate because sometimes it's like people, I
I've
guess
had a bad trip before.
oh
it's
my
not
god,
even just a bad trip. Apparently, what can happen, and this has been shown in like research, is sometimes what's scary with these kinds of drugs, even though they can have profound healing benefits. I'm 100% supportive of research. There's lots of people who've been able to heal from severe trauma, so I'm a big
right.
advocate
We,
for
we've had
researching
it
them.
here in Israel. People who have PTSD from wars over the years from October 7th as well are going through like therapy, like experimental therapy with
Yeah.
some very strong
Yeah,
psychedelics.
I've read that, and I think that's incredible.
And the results are amazing. It's like
Yeah.
high,
Yes.
high percentages are healed. Healed. The word is healed from PTSD.
The thing that's hard is that it can actually, in some cases, people who have families like mine where there's such a high rate of bipolar disorder, and for people who have high rates of schizophrenia, sometimes you have the genes, but it don't for whatever complicated reason, it doesn't activate, and it can kind of
Right.
activate it in certain people. Because part of what they're finding
That's
with bipolar and with schizophrenia is it's not just having genes. Sometimes it can be triggered by traumatizing events.
right. But this part is why deep research should be done,
Agreed.
because it's the medical use of it is very, very careful. So
Agreed.
that's why I'm not advocating, and I'm not personally doing this, but I'm like the one who is waiting anxiously to have such option, and not only the research option which we have now, to do it in a medical settings in a very careful way, with someone who does it and knows what it's doing.